starting to get to a point where you don't have a chance to
presidential. But I think there was an
Welcome to King 5's Photographer's Notebook.
Oh, I need to go with that.
Let's get politics.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello, I'm Megan Murnane, and I am a photojournalist and visual storyteller at King 5.
Oh, I just bit my lip.
It's a little weird looking at yourself in this thing.
This is what it looks like under the hat. Just this is pandemic right here.
I'm going to start with this. My name's Mark Anderson. I'm a King 5 photojournalist.
Hi there, I'm your host, Jake Wittenberg. Those voices you just heard belong to a very few of our very gifted and sometimes quirky King 5 photojournalists. This special, The Photographer's Notebook, is about the storytellers behind the camera. 2020 was a very challenging year for everyone, but when your job is to push through crowds, get that shot and find the story, and then COVID hits, all the rules go out the door in the name of safety. It takes some very creative people to get the process working, and a few of our very talented photojournalists decided to get together and give you a behind-the-scenes look at how they handled this otherwise very unusual year.
The story that stood out to me in 2020 before the pandemic happened was a shooting in downtown Seattle. We just had a press conference, it was wrapping up when we heard gunshots. I didn't realize it was gunshots at first. Michael, I think, realized it quicker than me. We called back to the station, found out that yes, it was indeed a shooting, and it was 4 blocks away from us. We ran the 4 blocks, and we came upon the scene where there were multiple people shot. If you look hard enough, you'll find the people helping others.
Just a few weeks after the shooting down here, Megan got to follow up on the story with reporter Tony Black with the victim and the young lady who helped save his life.
Randall Sullivan says he was on his way home from work on January 22nd.
I was texting with my wife, who was she was trying to get suggestions for dinner because she was down in San Diego for work.
Then he says he heard a loud series of pops, at first not seeing anything out of the ordinary.
But when I turned back around to sort of in the direction I was looking, I saw everybody else was like running away from where I was, and I kind of realized then that the pops that I had heard were gunshots and just sort of ran immediately.
But Sullivan didn't get far.
That's when I saw blood starting to in the pant leg and coming down the pant leg, and I realized that I'd been shot.
He was hit and went down to the ground in front of a coffee shop.
I looked up and I thought I saw somebody there, so I kind of just screamed out I've been shot, I've been shot. Hey, stranger.
Hi. How's it going? You look a lot better.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, good to see you.
Inside that shop was Alex Bennett, a former nurse who instinctively ran out to help.
You were very worried. I mean, you did say, am I gonna die? It was scary, so I don't blame you, but I could tell that you weren't going to die. And so I was I felt confident in saying, you're not gonna die.
Bennett even trying to help Sullivan reach his wife.
He's trying to mess with his phone, and I was just okay, I can text her for you and let her know what's going on.
She texted his wife the whole time as he was taken to Harborview.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that's from me and my wife for just providing a sense of calm and some much needed details to my wife, who was terrified 1,000 miles away. And I think just that early kind of settling helped just set the tone for that scenario, at least in my own head, for the rest of the night. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm really glad that you're
okay. It's okay.
People who tried to visit their family members at Life Care Center of Kirkland were turned away.
If I think back at 2020, the number one live shot that I will always remember is from the last day of February when Ted and I were at the Life Care Center in Kirkland. for what was believed to be at the time the first death from coronavirus.
They just said no visitors today for the safety of the patients and the people coming in.
For me, the year really changed overnight in late February. I woke up to a series of voicemails from the newsroom saying, "Get to Kirkland, the coronavirus is there, it's spreading in a nursing home."
That first, believed to be the first death in Kirkland is when everything really sunk in that this is not going away. This is going to be here probably for quite a bit of time. Now what?
I was looking around like, here, of all places, this is where COVID is now? What's going on?
We didn't really know how it spread. We didn't know a whole lot on it. And I'm looking back at those live shots, like Ted and I and all the other stations are outside of there. We're all trying to talk to people who are coming up, like asking questions. I was here yesterday. Do you know anything about this? I was just talking to my family member. I was just talking to this.
You're not getting any answers?
None. Zero. Zilch.
I spoke on the phone with Pat Patton of Kirkland, whose wife lives at Life Care and is recovering from a stroke. He has not been able to reach her.
In retrospect, I'm looking back at that like, how were, like there were so many people that probably were infected with it that at the time we didn't have testing, so we don't know that.
This has been the most consequential, busy, important year of my career as a journalist. I've never seen anything like it, and it's still unfolding.
So you're concerned that there may have been an exposure here?
Yes, I'm personal exposure as well as for my wife.
Because you've been visiting her, right?
Yes, I visit her every day, sometimes twice a day. You couldn't help but worry about her being there, but you'd be more worried if it happened to be one of her roommates. I'm sure they're doing what they need to do or what they've been told to do.
So this is one of my favorite stories that I shot this year for a couple of reasons. The first is it was the first in a long series that was not about coronavirus, which was nice to get a break from all the doom and gloom there. The second is we still had to take some COVID precautions, which led to kind of a funny image, this long stretch of cars, since we all had to social distance, bumping down these remote forest roads to get to these sites where we would check and look for that bear hair. And it really kind of illustrates that point that there are some jobs that just cannot be done remotely even in the pandemic, and this one is one of them.
It's a relatively new process being used here in Washington, at least, and state officials hope it's going to give them a better idea of the number of black bears that are actually living here. It is not easy to figure out how many bears live out in the woods, but the Department of Fish and Wildlife hopes hair can give them a better picture.
So this is called a corral. So we have 2 strands of barbed wire around trees, and then we have a pile of logs in the middle that we pour the lure onto.
Nicole Stevens says that smelly bait brings in black bears that leave little pieces of themselves behind. This is one of the sites from last year.
We're looking for any hairs that are caught up on these barbs, specifically bear hair. But if we can't tell what kind of hair it is, we'll collect it anyways.
And then it's off to the lab, where they use DNA to figure out if a bear was there, and also which individual bears. Better than the old way of estimating based on what hunters brought back.
The idea is that we'll do a couple of them annually in different parts of the state, kind of walk it around for a few years, and begin to have a good sense of how bear densities differ in those different landscapes.
But you have to go where the bears live. This study is in southwest Washington, near Toutle, on remote logging roads. Collecting this hair is really kind of hands-on hard work, huh?
Yeah, it is. It can be fairly time-consuming. It takes us about a day to check 9 stations. We have 36 stations total.
Maybe it's a bear eyelash.
But this is what they're looking for across the first 3 stations, one tiny hair, helping Fish and Wildlife make more informed decisions about managing the population.
It is pretty interesting. There's a ton of unanswered questions.
Near Toutle.
That's it.
Michael Crow, King 5 News.
When we come back.
I got called every slur, every bad word that you can imagine. This became more than a protest. This just blew up.
Last year,
Chris Daniels started a segment called Drinks with Daniels, where he sat down and got a drink and talked to all the different politicians that are running.
So, Gail, why did you pick this place?
It's a great way to get to know them, but this year was different.
Jesse, where are we on this dark and stormy day?
We couldn't be inside without a mask. We had to find all these different venues with outdoor seating, find a way to set them 6 feet apart and talk. We tried to do it without a mask because people need to see what you look like when you talk to get a better understanding of you. They need to see how you react to questions. They want to see what you look like when you're asked a hard question, or maybe they want to see you laugh, or they want to see you smile. They want to get to know your personality. When you watch it on TV, it just looks like, oh, a couple people talking, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with planning.
One of the things that I heard criticism from both sides.
We need to not only pick out different places for these people to go where they're outside and we can talk to them, or put it in the 6 feet, and even if it doesn't look like it right in the shot, we are outside, we're following all the rules, which was very, very, very difficult.
You just used a lot of words. I'm gonna give you a chance for a drink break.
Oh, very nice. Fremont Brewing.
In the end, going through all of those, a lot of people told us that it kind of changed the way they looked at these different candidates and really gave them a good view of them. And knowing who you're voting for, especially this year, is very, very important.
I don't think anything could have prepared me for that night.
And there's still that police cruiser back there burning. Some nearby shops have also had their windows broken. Somebody actually threw one of the mannequins from a store onto the burning car.
I had started my shift at like 11, and we went to a very peaceful protest. Then I was very happy about how peaceful it was, and the messages that the speakers there at Black Lives Matter were trying to convey there. And the police and the protesters worked in solidarity. I'm sitting there editing, and then all of a sudden I get a call from Amy, and she's like, "You need to get out here. There's cars on fire." And I was like, it's like 4 o'clock. I'm like, what is happening? And it's just a blur. Seeing that car on fire, like, I barely remember that. It just, all of a sudden it felt like the rain just started pouring even harder out of nowhere. And they quickly turned into night. You hear like the first flashbang, and you feel like the crowd go around you, and you're carrying all this gear, and you're drenched, and that's when things really just got real. This became more than a protest. This became, this just evolved, like blew up, essentially. And all my expertise that I felt, I've only been in this business for like 5 years, and all this expertise and comfortableness that I ever had just went out the window. Thank God we had hired such great security, and my security guard, Eric, was, former military, or he actually is still in the military, I believe. I don't think I would have gotten through that night without him. All of these things are going through your head. Your fight or flight is insane at that point. And the entire time you also have producers and people in your ear saying, "Hey, we're gonna take you in 2 minutes. Are you ready? Are you ready? Give us a shot, give us a shot." So you have to be not only fearing for your life or whatever is going on in that moment, but at the same time, you have a job to do still. I'm African American, and I'm also Latino, so I am a quintessential person of color. During that night, as media, we were getting harassed, obviously. Fake news, all this stuff. I got called every slur, every bad word that you can imagine. And the one that hurt me the most was a couple of black kids with, masks on. They just come out of a store during all the looting. And they were mad at me, but they didn't try to take my camera or anything from that, which I was kind of used to. They just said, they looked at me and they said, "Man, why are you filming us? You're black, man. Why aren't you with us right now? Why are you filming us? Why aren't you with us?" And I didn't have an answer for him. Obviously, I don't want to break the law. I'm not a law. I don't want to break the law, and I don't want to be, doing any of that stuff. But I didn't have an answer just like to why aren't you with us? Why, it was him saying like, why is that camera and your job much more important to you right now than being a black, being a part of this black community? That's kind of, nagged at me every time I went to a protest, every time I went to a march or anything like that. It was so hard. It was so hard to kind of disconnect myself because, this was a gigantic civil rights movement and is a gigantic civil rights movement. And these people are out there in the streets fighting for me and, trying to change the world for me. And I can thank them under my breath, but like when I'm out there, I have to be this facet of truth. Part of this job and part of, standing for truth and being, truthful and telling a good story is like you can't mix in your feelings. You have to tell the story from both sides as best as you can with all the information that you've got. That is what I've known since I started this career. That is, it has to stay that way. It was truly insane, and also I would absolutely do it again.
I work on the morning shows, so we work on the 4:30 up through to the 7 o'clock shows. So my experience up in the CHOP was always at 2 o'clock in the morning on.
Demonstrators say they have no plans to leave.
At night, certainly there was a lot less people around, but the people that were there were like the bodyguards of their area. So they were very protective of that scene, and that really put a different look to it, a much scarier look.
Now on King 5 Mornings, we are seeing the first round of city crews clearing out the so-called CHOP in Seattle, but already protesters are pushing back.
July 1st, I'll never forget it.
You have 5 minutes to disperse.
We got word early that things were going to happen, so our 3 cameramen, Jim, Doug, and I, all had our assignments. We all had our reporters. I think it might have been 4 o'clock in the morning. Here comes the police.
I want you guys to picture your daughter's faces on mine right now.
Police arrested those who refused to leave, other protesters leaving on their own.
And the protesters in their tents really weren't aware that this was going to happen.
Some neighbors say they have been waiting weeks to get their streets back.
And one of the sad things that I saw was as the police were moving towards us and people were being forced out of those tents, they were homeless people. They weren't the demonstrators. They weren't the guys out there with the clubs and the masks, and so that was really, really sad.
It's kind of crazy because people were in their tents and they were sleeping, and to see them actually like drag people out their tents and whatnot, it's crazy to me because people were just actually being here peacefully.
I felt it was really my job to be the eyes and the ears of the public.
But I also can understand why they're here because of the violence. So we knew it was coming, because of that violence. So Mayor Jenny had to do something.
It was a constant move, constant effort to make sure that our public, that our viewers could see what was going on.
I only really sit there and say that our message has been diluted because of the violence that has occurred and different insiders coming in trying to push their own message and our own agenda. But as I continue to say that, we must continue to stand on one accord with each other in love and unity.
When we come back, we'll take you to the tiny Whatcom County town, separated from the rest of the United States, and our photojournalist meet baby goats.
One of the highlights of my job is being able to travel to all corners of the state of Washington, being able to tell stories in places that many times lifelong Washingtonians have never even heard of. Now, COVID this past year has limited the amount of travel that we usually get to take, but COVID was also the reason that we were able to go to Point Roberts, Washington, a small little exclave only connected by the Canadian border and surrounded by water on all other sides. And because of that, the only way we could get there was by boat. And since we didn't have a car, we had to be escorted around the entire area on the back of an ambulance by the fire department, who are our escorts for the day. And I would have to say, because of all these unique circumstances, that this is probably why this story was my favorite of 2020.
Isolation has always defined this spot.
It's got a lot of green and it's surrounded 3 sides by water.
It is the Whatcom County towns separated from the mainland and the rest of the lower 48.
It's great for outside and activities and water.
A border town like no other in the state. Point Roberts, Washington has a fluky history dating back to the Treaty of 1846, when British and American negotiators decided to slice up the territories at the 49th parallel, leaving this 4.8 square mile exclave since in U.S. control. Separated from the rest of the country by 2 different border crossings. Never much of a problem until now. How much longer can you keep going?
I don't know.
Tamara Hansen runs the Saltwater Cafe, which has a view of the international waters and the heyday of the Point at a time when bands like Bachman Turner Overdrive used to play here to thousands of Canadians, many on Sundays, trying to escape British Columbia's then stiff liquor laws. She still relies on her northern neighbors to keep her business humming.
I rely on approximately 90% of my business from the Canadians that come, the seasonal people. We make our money in the summer to get through the winter.
Yet COVID and the strict essentials-only border closure has made it near impossible to keep the spigot flowing.
Thank you so much.
There is no regular Washington State ferry here. The only way you can get to Point Roberts is by air or sea. U.S. Department of Transportation data shows nearly 3 million people crossed into Point Roberts 20 years ago, 1.4 million in the 2019 calendar year. But there have only been 217,000 this year, with most of those happening pre-pandemic. It's led to drastic drops in business in this 1,300-person community, where not a single person has tested positive for the virus. Take the marina, for example. Normally, this time of the year, the locals say this area would be jumping with all sorts of people, live concerts and the like. But right now, it's only at 20% capacity.
Business is here down 80%. Down 80%. They can't survive through this winter. It's not possible.
Brian Calder was raised here and is a former Vancouver, BC city councilor.
Point Roberts is totally unique and therefore requires a unique solution.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee late last week joined a chorus of elected leaders trying to barter for a border solution with U.S. and Canadian officials. Both state senators, along with Congress members Susan DelBene and Rick Larson, have also chimed in.
If I had known it wasn't going to open this summer, I wouldn't have stayed open. I'm losing money. I haven't paid myself since March.
Tamara believes the future of the Point is hanging on a change.
We really need that border open to survive.
In Point Roberts, Washington, Chris Daniels, King 5 News.
So 2020, I'm going to be honest, I think I had probably one of the easiest years that you could have around a virus because I was blessed to work with Chris Cashman. Chris Cashman is a funny guy, and his stories are always funny. So while everybody's covering coronavirus and doing a very good job doing it, being responsible, doing the news thing, making sure everyone's informed correctly, making sure everyone's going to be all right, I was blessed to work with Chris Cashman, and he took me to a baby goat farm. And it was the best day of my life.
Today I'm going to introduce you to 2 more special adjectives.
So I could say this goat is taking a rest.
That goat is eating the grass.
Got an email here. It says, wanted you to know about something special. 1st grade teacher at Christian Elementary in Parkland, Washington, lives on a goat farm and is making the most of it to teach her students grammar by creating a series called Grammar with Goats on YouTube. Lindsay, does that add up?
It does, yeah. This goat has long, floppy ears. It's been challenging to find ways to connect with them and engage them in online learning. So my team and I just one day were collaborating on what our weekly lesson was going to be and decided grammar was something we still wanted to carry out and the alliteration of grammar with goats just sounded fun, so we decided to do it one week and have kept it going since.
The goat videos are just so much fun. It has been a really big hit with my first grade class.
It is not easy to teach 6-year-olds grammar in a classroom, let alone during a quarantine.
Which is trickier, engaging the students or the goats?
Oh gosh, you know, it's actually pretty similar.
It's a new practice. Yes, that's a goat. Giving a haircut to my photographer, Ryan.
Does it look good?
It looks great. You're gonna be very, very happy with it.
They can keep the kids' attention way more than I ever could.
Right?
Probably any teacher ever could.
You got a goat milk mustache. There's nothing left in there. Oh, you got a haircut.
I did.
Perks.
In this half hour, we've shown you how a news photographer's life can go from crisis to chaos to comedy. And our photojournalists have given you a sneak peek at the challenges and emotions they face behind the lens every day while gathering the news. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to join me and Mimi Jung daily on King 5 Mornings, where we bring you the work of these gifted photojournalists every day to start your morning. As always, stay safe.